Okay, we're here with post-fight discussion for Lomachenko Linares. So first question here, what was your reaction when Linares scored that knockdown?
It was surprise. I'm usually taking photos, so I'm zoomed in pretty tight. I don't get to see much of the footwork, but I figured, okay, Loma was trying to do some of his fancy footwork and must have got caught because he just popped straight down out of my frame. So I was like, oh, crap, is he hurt? What's going on?
Yeah.
But he seemed to pop up pretty well and go straight to the corner and seemed okay.
You were pretty shocked, though, right?
Yeah, I was. I almost pulled, like, whoa.
To me, that was one of the big boxing moments of the year so far. Really surprising to see him go down.
Yeah.
How had you seen the fight leading up to that point?
I thought.
Did you have a sense of the score in your head at that point? Had you seen Linares winning rounds up to that point?
Yeah, I think I gave him, because that knockdown, I think it happened like somewhere in the sixth, so I want to say I had
round.
like 1 or 2 rounds for Linares. I felt that Loma was really comfortable, but Linares had flashes where he was, getting a bully a little bit. He was getting warned. I don't know if this is going to be a narrative that Loma gets a lot of calls, but he was getting warned for some stuff, but I feel like some of the punches might have been low, but it's also the case that Loma moves so much that sometimes I think it's not intentional, but Loma moves into something, like he moved into the knockdown.
Yeah, there is an interesting parallel with that, thinking of some of it's an odd thing to relate it to, but the Mayweather-McGregor build-up, people were, the UFC fans were talking about how McGregor was going to use his angles, and then meanwhile, there was a great moment where McGregor was trying to stance switch, and then Mayweather popped him, straight down the pipe. So that is an interesting thought. So you thought something like that had occurred. What about the stoppage? Again, the next most dramatic moment here. More dramatic, I guess. Did you see that stoppage coming at that moment? How had you seen the momentum of the fight? So as far as when the knockdown happened first, you saw the fight being competitive. Although Lomachenko potentially winning.
Yeah, he was stacking rounds.
And then the knockdown came.
Yeah.
So where did you see the standing of the fight when the knockout came, and did you see that knockout coming?
Definitely didn't see the knockout coming.
Yeah.
I did see that after Loma got knocked down, I feel like he's always active, but I feel like he was trying to get back the knockdown, definitely, and make sure that he was securing rounds. He got more active. He was making sure he a lot of times I feel like he doesn't sit on his punches. He like pats and moves, but I feel like he was sitting on his punches a little bit more and wanting to not just touch him, but like make an impactful statement, to kind of erase, or not really erase, but kind of like get back that knockdown. So I really didn't see it coming. Loma did get more comfortable. He seemed to get kind of let the knockdown go, have a short memory, and get back, to boxing. But he was landing. That combination was a little long though. He was doing like maybe 1-2 move and then land one on the way out or as he rotated around, but not. I feel like that was maybe 4 or 5 punches.
Yeah, I laugh because I'm looking forward to making a highlight video of that. That whole. So I'll give. I don't think I really gave my thoughts leading up to the knockdown, but yeah, just to recap my thinking of the fight. I saw it being competitive-ish early on, but I was scoring. I'd scored every round for Lomachenko. The first 5 I scored for Lomachenko. I thought, I saw already there were some grumblings online of people saying it was competitive, but from my eyes, and I didn't really have the best view. I was trying to mix between the monitor and looking down from the ring for my not perfect seat. Lomachenko was the one who was always a step ahead, and he seemed to have his feet under him when he was landing his shots. Meaning, to me there was actual weight on his punches. Anyone who's ever hit a heavy bag, that's where the power comes from. And Linares, to me, he was landing some punches, but he never seemed to, again, have, his feet under him. It never seemed to be from optimal position. So even though he's the bigger guy, from my perspective, Lomachenko was the one who was actually landing the heavier shots. I was very surprised when the knockdown came. I think myself and everyone else was wondering, how much damage was done. Is this a flash knockdown? What's going to happen in the next round? And I thought Lomachenko did look a little bit apprehensive. He didn't look heavily hurt, but it definitely looked like it changed the momentum of what he was doing.
Yep.
So then we have, Lomachenko winning the first 5. Linares gets the knockdown round. I gave Linares the That was the 6th round. I gave him the 7th and the 8th, although they were close rounds. I thought Linares edged those rounds. I gave the 9th Lomachenko another close round. The 10th was fascinating round because the first minute and a half, roughly 2 minutes almost, I thought was pretty close, looked kind of like the last two. And then right around the 1 minute mark, Lomachenko started landing, he got inside and started landing these great uppercut combos, and then it's like, ooh. And then he put the foot on the gas pedal again, did it again. And then, he had been getting Linares to circle to his left, and he landed that left to the body. He mixed it after the uppercuts upstairs, and I mean, my God, what a beautiful body shot, and how great was it to see? I mean, there's some debate about how much of a size advantage Linares had. There were some reports that he was as heavy as 154 tonight. He and his team just mocked that comment at the post-fight press conference, said he was more like sort of like 143, 145-ish. I think they said there was 143 after the fight, but I don't know. I guess that's after he sweated out, so maybe 145 during the fight. So really interesting to see the smaller man, land the body shot like that. I mean, that's where you're used to seeing like a weight bully knocked out.
Exactly.
Or knockout, where there's a guy who outweighs the guy by 10 or 15 pounds on fight night. Like, Canelo knocking out Amir Khan. I mean, granted, that was a headshot, not a body shot, but I mean, like, really interesting. I mean, all night, the tenor of the fight, Lomachenko being so much shorter, seeming to be at such a size disadvantage, and then for him to land that body shot and end the fight, I mean, it was really, really an interesting moment, I thought.
Yeah, and it was surprising in the fact that, I don't know if you saw it, it might just be Linares' face, but it seems like he walked in the ring with his eyes tore up. He has eyes like mine, wrinkles or whatever. Like, we have a strange skin. So Loma was hitting that eye. So, and it was starting to bleed, and I was, through the lens, I was like, oh, okay, that eye's getting bad. So I thought maybe the stoppage would come that way. I didn't think it would come from a liver shot. And then, as you said, even if, let's say he is, 145, or let's say maybe he was as high as 150s or whatever, you would expect that. Linares landed some flush shots. And then obviously with the knockdown, he landed that one clean. Loma got up. Like, that answers some questions about his chin for me, because he got up, he withstood some stuff. His face looked a little marked. How did his face look at the post-fight? I was still upstairs. So
Linares or Lomachenko?
Lomachenko's face.
Lomachenko looked, that's a topic I'll get into, but his face was definitely marked out.
Okay, definitely marked out, yeah, because I feel like he got touched up.
Which,
so if it was a bigger man, like, where's the effect of that damage? Where I didn't see that, on Loma too bad, so either he wasn't getting as touched up, punches weren't landing, or those punches might not have been as effective for somebody that's supposed to be the bigger guy.
Hold on one second. Those are your bags, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question, then I'm going to go get the bags, because that's more fun than actually pausing the video. Yeah. So coming out of this fight, how does this make you feel about Lomachenko's turn at 135? Potential opponents, Ray Beltran, Mikey Garcia, Robert Easter.
Okay, solo show. Basically, what I think is that a lot of detractors of Loma you have to give him props for this one. You could say Rigo was old. You could say a lot of other people, they're bums, or they're not stiff competition. Nicholas Walters is inactive, and he's older too. There's all those things. But with Linares, this was a true test, and it was a battle. We actually saw him go through adversity, and he overcame it. So now I'm, ready to see him at 135 versus some stiff competition. Last time we both were at the last Easter fight, right? I feel I wasn't crazy impressed, but people are allowed to have an off night. But he didn't impress me there. So I don't know if Easter would be a tougher test than Linares. He's much taller, he's much rangier. He didn't fight that way last time versus his previous opponent. I gave a lot of rounds to, and I'm sorry, the name
Javier Fortuna.
There we go. Yeah, Fortuna was touching him up a little bit. So, but I don't know. What are you thinking about at 135?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to me. I mean, my gut reaction is everything seems more competitive now. The way I had framed this coming in, Lomachenko fought as an amateur at 132. in his second Olympics. He fought now as a pro at 126. 130, he, to some extent had weight advantages in those fights, or at least those were comfortable size-wise. Relative to his height, he's about 5'6". When you see him in person, he's not a big guy. I mean, he's
small frame.
You would think he's not just not a big guy. If you just saw him on the subway, you'd be like, well, that's a little, a small person. So 135, he's going to start running into every single person having a size advantage over him. And I mean, it was interesting tonight. I mean, we talked about this, or I talked about this on the podcast related to the Daniel Jacobs fight against Selecki. Selecki was coming up from 154, and, there was some intrigue about how is this going to matter. And I think ultimately what you saw was Selecki was able to land, Jacobs was able to land, and Jacobs wasn't that bothered by Selecki's shots. And Jacobs got a knockdown. It's an imperfect comparison, but you're going to start to see that here of Lomachenko, who is not really known for, he's really more known for, sharp shots, landing shots from angles people aren't seeing coming, not really brute punching power. And at 135, that's going to be even less, Again, really interesting that he actually got that knockout ultimately, but just more broadly speaking, I mean, compared to the lower weight classes, though, you're going to see the effect of those punches is going to be less, and the effect of his opponent's punches on him. Again, Linares scored that knockdown. Yeah. It's credit to Linares for the punching power, credit to Linares for the timing. But still, who has possibly the best timing in the sport? Mikey Garcia. So, very interesting going ahead with that fight. I mean, Lomachenko definitely did not look like a big or a lightweight at all, let alone a big lightweight. So adds a lot more intrigue to those fights. So I'm just going to report on the post-fight mood a bit. I think you weren't down for all of that, or I don't know how much of that you caught.
Yeah, no, I wasn't down here.
Yeah, just some post-fight comments. It was really, really striking. So after the fight ended, from the press, people were buzzing. They were excited. It was a good fight. And I mean, judging from the reaction online, it seems like, for Lomachenko fans, he was largely redeemed by getting the knockdown or knockout. I mean, he got knocked down, some dispute about how much he might have been hurt. He had some, tough going in the middle rounds, faced a lot of adversity, but he came back and got the, impressive knockout. For my money, probably his single most impressive knockout, even just highlight-wise, let alone the quality of the opponent, as opposed to some of his Lomachenko wins where the opponents were kind of discouraged and just ended it.
Or Rocky Martinez. Even.
Oh, Rocky Martinez. Yeah, that was pretty stunning.
But that one, even though that is a flasher one, but this one, just the after effect, that's going to be an awesome game.
Right, and again, certainly no comparison for the quality of the opponents. I mean, especially the combos that led up to it. I mean, it was great. Yeah, but. So anyway, mood of us here, we're all pretty, press row mood at least. People were excited for him. People thought, redeemed by the final outcome. Mood from him and his manager, Igis Klimas, crestfallen. Lomachenko looked marked up. He was not celebratory. I mean, Lord knows we've seen plenty of fighters after performances, win or lose, bravado, whether they're trying to prove it to themselves or whether they do feel it that way, they're trying to spin things all in the most positive way possible. Clearly, he was disappointed by the outcome. Igis was disappointed by the outcome. And, I mean, there are multiple reasons for that. I mean, one, he did go down. I mean, he's the type of guy who has an aura of invincibility, even though he has the Salido fight. So this doesn't help with that as far as potentially his own self-confidence. When he turned pro, he was supposed to be the guy who was going to be undefeated for 10 years. Then he gets the Salido loss, and now he looks, mortal once again after racking up a string of impressive wins. So he seemed defeated, and from the standpoint of Igis Klimas, I mean, look at what happened with Vasyl Lomachenko. Gennady Golovkin. His rise to, to the stardom that he has gotten came from, again, looking invincible, knocking guys out, even though, I think us who follow the sport closely know that those weren't the best opponents. But then once he started to look impressive, I mean, look at, what did he do, like 6,000 people, something like that at StubHub. I mean, the Triple G buzz seems to have faded a bit. For fans who want to be, they want to be a fan of the unbeatable guy in the sport, Triple G seems to have lost that. And Lomachenko, I think, he is a Ukrainian fighter fighting in the United States. I mean, he really does have the deck stacked against him to some extent. That's his rise as a star or potential superstar in the United States. Is really based around him looking unbeatable. And tonight I think he did look beatable. And I think, again, if he's going to be campaigning at 135, serious questions about that. So,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts about that? As far as I don't know if you got a sense of his mood or any other just comments about.
Yeah, no, I feel so generally. I think shot a couple of other of his fights, and generally when he wins, normally there's a backflip. There's the jump in the air, the iconic, shots on all the shirts.
Yeah.
Generally there's a ride, so I'm normally looking through the lens, and he's gonna, get picked up on the shoulders, and he's gonna parade around the whole ring. He's gonna have the belt. He's gonna pump. I have one of him fist pumping. Normally I have a chance to get all these shots. He did it for a little bit, dropped immediately down. There was definitely a deference to the situation, and honestly, to quote AJ, he was humble. He was supremely humble, and he did. Once he got done with his interviews, he went and bowed to the crowd, which he generally does, but he was definitely not as hyped as he normally does. And I don't know if that might be due to his father, because I've seen his father put him in check once or twice when he tried to go way overboard, but I don't feel he was trying to go overboard.
Yeah.
I think they were both on the same page at this particular point in time. I felt he was very gracious to Linares, but once you had mentioned that to me, I also agreed, because it was hard to get shots of him celebrating because there was very little of that going on in the ring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. So a few thoughts about Linares. So, so first, just a comment about that. I mean, it's interesting. On one hand, I have an impulse to give Lomachenko a lot of credit for getting the stoppage. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's really, so how much regard do you have Linares coming in? He's a guy who coming in had 3 knockout losses. Mm-hmm. He had been on a long road back after that. He had been written off, at least definitely by the U.S. boxing press and fandom. Really not regarded that highly, but, he had a long streak. He came back. How impressive do you think the stoppage is over Linares, given some of his durability issues?
And I'd have to go back, because it's been, I think, years since he had a loss, right? So,
yeah. And he had the back-to-back KO losses.
Yeah, but those were chin. I feel right. I don't know. Again, don't kill me, online community.
Well, he's had a mix of being knocked down and knocked out to the chin. All sorts of cuts. He did get marked up again tonight. You were talking about that.
I thought that was
he's had that weakness throughout his whole career, which, by the way, early on, I think I might have been giving the first 5 rounds to Lomachenko. I think part of that I might have been a little bit swayed by how marked up Linares got. Mm-hmm. And, I sort of wasn't, fair enough to him maybe just to say that, his skin does that. But anyway.
Yeah, and that's something that's always going to do. And not to say that that's an excuse per se, but the question was, are we going to give him credit for what was done? If I have to give him credit, because one, he got back up off the mat. That gives him an extra, if we're going to play Street Fighter, some extra bonus meter there. I'm going to give him a second bonus meter for not doing blood, not just getting a stoppage due to the corner or whatnot.
Right.
I think there might be questions.
Physical stoppage.
Physical stoppage. Linares was having issues getting up, and while some might say, even Linares said he thought it was a little bit premature, I was looking at the count. I had a clear sense of what was going on. He got up almost, I feel, have to look at the replay again, don't kill me, but it feels like he wasn't ready to go by 8-9.
I felt like he got up, or he was signaling he was up at 10 or 11.
Yeah,
maybe. He was
bent all the way over.
The up by 8. Clean off the gloves, ready to go. He definitely wasn't signaling by his body language either that he was ready to go. If you are in that position, and he has been in that position before, you have to make the impression to the ref that you want to continue. It's not enough to just get to your feet. At the same time, there is room a little bit for the ref to use his discretion, and especially in the state of New York, they've shown some caution with that. So,
and once it gets called off,
he has no argument, but
but it's up to me how you react. So once it got called, he went to his corner and sat down. That's not
right.
Somebody.
He wasn't no, I was ready to continue.
Yeah, that's not somebody up and punching the gloves and like Manny jumping around. He went and sat on his stool, and then maybe later, once his head cleared up and the pain went away from that liver shot, he was like, oh, okay, yeah, I was ready to go. But I don't know, he wasn't protesting too much, so I got to give him credit. That's a legit stoppage. And I think, as you said, that redeemed the night for him.
So Yeah. So I already partly asked this before, but just to ask point blank again, because this is the note I want to go out on. Mikey Garcia versus Vasyl Lomachenko, if it happens next, how do you see the fight going?
Ooh, happens next. I want to say Mikey has shown some dimensions when he fought Broner, and I know it's Broner. And by the way, I love AB, but I know it's Broner. But he showed some dimension where he handled some movement. He did some things different. Normally, Mikey, he's so textbook, so fundamental, but he was able to get outside the box and actually adjust to a different fighter. Linares, I felt he adjusted to Loma's movement a little bit. On some pivots, he was there. Some he wasn't. Some I felt like he was doing, I don't think it's dirty really, but he'd have his elbows out or he'd hook them to kind of stop Loma from doing his like little L-step shift around or whatever you call it. But I feel like Mikey would do that in a more probably efficient manner, and then he'll be able to throw. Loma was good where he would like turn and adjust and then be ready to catch or not get hit with something like Loma normally catches people with, like a pat and then disappear and then boom, like slams you with his two. But I feel like Mikey would be able to adjust to that and then throw back and counter at the same time. Because I feel like if you can do that or somehow effectively stop him from doing all that shifting, you cut down his game. Basically, you don't want to fight his fight. Once he starts to get comfortable and fight his fight, that's when you start losing rounds and you start getting touched up. So I have to give the edge to Mikey.
Yeah, I mean, I would pick Mikey. That's my hot take.
Yeah.
I mean, Mikey Garcia. Something I say, you really get a sense. I mean, one of the things you get from seeing a fight in person that you don't get as much from the TV is how the fighters move around the ring, because you're seeing it from one fixed angle the whole time, as opposed to TV where they're constantly cutting to get optimum angle. I mean, it sounds obvious, but. So you really get to see how they move around the ring. And Lomachenko is known for his flashy angles and really, suddenly accelerating, getting around people. But Mikey has such good footwork. I mean, that's something I've really noticed from seeing him in person. The subtle movement, really how he's able to cut off the ring, always make sure he's at the right angle to throw his punch when he's going to throw. I think that's, also, again, I really think Mikey Garcia has fantastic timing. And I think that's, really two key things. I mean, Lomachenko has fast feet. He has that explosive movement. But I think Mikey would be able to apply, pressure in that way. I think he would be able to use very intelligent footwork, very good timing. And Mikey Garcia is bombing people out at 135.
Exactly.
I think he's a much, much harder puncher than Linares is at 135. He's fought his last two fights at 140. He's going to come down. I think he'll have a similar fight night weight or fight night size as Linares tonight. He doesn't have the same height and reach advantage that Linares did over Lomachenko, but I think he'd have a clear size advantage over Lomachenko at this stage in their career. I know they've fought in similar weight classes, but as of this moment in time, I think he'd have a big size advantage. So, I would edge Mikey Garcia. I wouldn't, it would be ridiculous to say that, he's going to beat Lomachenko easily or out clearly edge him. I mean, Lomachenko showed a lot tonight, even though we saw some flaws and maybe some limits and a bit of a ceiling. I mean, going into this, there were people saying, he's going to go up to 147, and they love to bring up, gym stories, which may or may not be true. Yeah, he dominates welterweights. Yeah, it's like he might dominate, a journeyman welterweight or an amateur welterweight who's not really, a rank amateur. Or a ranked amateur, either one of those. I mean, a good amateur, but not really a true pro. But, I mean, this showed as a pro, I have to think Lomachenko is going to have our time, at 140. Or, again, the advantages he's had are really going to start to peel back, even at 135 and as he goes up. And, it's not like we're just talking about a hypothetical person at 135. If you're trying to look at who would be the guy to give him trouble at 135, there's a guy right there in Mikey Garcia. So, very interesting. Lomachenko showed a lot. I just want to give a quick shout out. I don't know if you saw this in our Instagram chat. Friend of Sunday Puncher, Intelligent Boxer. Check out Intelligent Boxer's great content. Yes. He was saying what he wanted to see tonight was Lomachenko get knocked down and get to see what he's really made of. And we got to see that, and he's made of a lot. I mean, really impressively came back. So, great night of boxing. Some fun top-ranked prospects on the undercard. Pretty good fight, actually, in the other televised fight. I thought that fight was pretty fun. with the Dominican fighter against Alejandro Barrera.
Yeah, another back and forth. Like they
yeah, it was a good fight.
Some
And fantastic. Oh, I mean, so many good fights this year. But, you know, it's funny to think back to we did the first post-fight video that we've done like this at the Wilder-Ortiz fight, seeing, you know, Wilder knock down Ortiz, Wilder get knocked down, Wilder get the knockout. I mean, very similar swing here, although both times were so abrupt, it almost kind of, you didn't get the full, you know, you didn't even quite get the full energy from that, because it's sort of the Linares knockdown of Lomachenko came out of nowhere, and then the knockout. I mean, in hindsight, it didn't come out of nowhere because Lomachenko was landing combinations in that moment, but still, I don't think anyone in the arena was expecting that. I mean, it seemed that, you know, Linares, the biggest guy, the bigger guy, Lomachenko wasn't really hurting him. You know, they both seemed to be a little bit worn down, and then just down and out. So yeah, really great, fun night of boxing. Yeah. Any final thoughts? Or
great crowd, lots of Loma fans. Linares had a lot of fans too. We're in New York, so it's pretty international. There's all types of flavors of people here, but definitely Loma was a big draw. I remember him being at the theater and not being able to fill the theater, and those.
You're talking about a few fights ago, yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking about maybe like a year or two, year and a half ago. So, you know, to go from, as you were saying, you know, he's at a disadvantage being a fighter from overseas, Ukraine, but he's drawing, he's pulling people, and I think his trajectory and stock only can go up from here, from both the casuals, from the people who, you know, have love of country for Ukraine, and from the hardcores. We got to give them some. We got to give them some props.
Yeah. So some other quick sort of, you know, reporting notes from the event. So. Yeah, I mean, as you had said, I mean, just his ticket selling trajectory. He went from not selling out the theater to in the last fight, he like super sold out the theater. I mean, they sold
theaters like 5,500.
Yeah, but like they could have sold definitely more for that fight. I think they sort of underestimated the demand for that fight.
Tickets sold out quick.
This fight, according to people in Press Row, which aren't really verified sources, but people had said, sort of secondhand source from MSG, that Lomachenko sold 11,000 tickets, that they'd configured it for 10,000. He sold that out, so then they opened up some more tickets. And for us, where we were sitting, that was very visible, because the lower bowl seemed mostly full, at least. You know, you never fill. There are always going to be like singles here or there that don't sell, but, you know, capacity in the lower bowl. And then in the upper bowl, they had like 2 sections of seats. They had clearly been selling tickets to. The rest of it was empty, and then a little bit of spillover from that. So it was maybe 2 sections sold out up there, you know, were capacity, and then a third one. So we'll see what the attendance numbers got reported as. Yeah, the word on the street from here is that he sold about 11,000 tickets. So, you know, not bad to go from not being able to sell out of 5,500, selling out of 5,500, and then immediately his next fight, doubling that. So, you know, every reason to think. I mean, it will be interesting to see if he's lost a bit of his luster for the fanboys who want to see an invincible fighter. Now he looks immortal. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who would take that place necessarily. It'd be interesting to see how people juggle around the pound-for-pound list. Now that, again, he looks a little more normal. If Terrence Crawford clearly takes that slot, I think a lot of people might, you know, if they want to be a fan of the guy, might think that's Crawford now. But, you know, Crawford's fighting Jeff Warren. We'll see what that fight looks like. So, another just the quick reporting note. Got to see Bob Arum's reaction. During the post-fight press conference, someone asked Lomachenko about the recently announced Mikey Garcia-Robert Easter unification fights. They have 2 of the belts. Lomachenko now has 1. The 4th is with Ray Beltran. So saying, would he want to fight the winner of that unification fight? Bob Arum.
But no, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, Bob Arum, the question was asked to Lomachenko. Bob Arum was standing next to him, instantly kind of I mean, you know, Bob still has a lot of piss and vinegar in him, but he's slowing down his old age, kind of did a slow motion, just kind of grimace, shook his head. It was a very funny reaction, just gave me like a sour face and shook his head, just like, no, you know, sort of mouthing, no. I don't think he's eager to work with, you know, Al Heyman or Mikey Garcia. And, you know, by the way, Lomachenko looking a little more mortal, I think they'd be much, much happier to take the Ray Beltran fight. I mean, that's a unification fight that's on the table in-house. Maybe even some other fights got a little more acclimated to 135. And then, you know, they'll worry about doing the Mikey Garcia fight would be the winner of that fight, which presumably is Mikey Garcia, would be the biggest fight. But looks like they're perfectly fine to do their own Lomachenko business in the meantime.
Matchroom Mikey?
Yeah, that's a whole other. Well, I just recorded a 2-hour podcast about that this week, so I'm not going to get into that.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah, check out the podcast feed if you haven't seen it. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
very good episode, by the way. Yeah, Angelo and I really broke down in a very granular detail everything there is to talk about with the new Eddie Hearn deal. Okay, so I think that's it. Any final thoughts?
No, Loma's here to stay.
Yeah, or any
sorry,
final
haters.
thoughts, because we already started. Yeah.
Yeah, Loma's here to stay.
Great night of boxing. Lomachenko's at 135, and it's very interesting to see how that will go. Yeah, and again, Adames, right, the Dominican fighter, welterweight. So we got another welterweight guy who we could see against, top rank welterweights. Got a new guy in that mix for top rank. Great. So. Great night. Enjoy, guys. Check out the podcast. Check out the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Boxing Lens as well, by the way. You can check out some sweet photos from tonight. Okay.
Intelligent boxer.
Shout out again to Intelligent
Shout out
Boxer.
to Top Rank.
We out. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got a sweet backdrop here tonight. Anyway, we're out.